you done now? Oh, Brad, what have you done
And he joins me now. You might recognize him from all the several plays that have been popular here in the Texas area as well as United States, from the Greater Tuna series, from Blood and Holly, his most recent show. Of course, I Saw the Lights, and I Heard That, all plays by this man, Mr. Jaston Williams. Jason, how you doing, sir?
Good. Thank you for having me on.
Well, I'm just so excited to talk to you. Again, we were speaking before we started, and I've just been a fan my entire life of your work, as well as Mr. Joe Sears and all the work that y'all have done over the years, especially with the Greater Tuna series. I wanted to start, though. I know you just came off of Blood and Holly, which debuted here in the Houston area, I think in November of last year, of 2021. How did those shows go for you?
You know, it was wonderful. You know, the thing, it's been so sad the last couple of years, and you know, for those of us who make our living and get our joy from performing for people, it's been really hard. It's you know, not hearing the audience. That's been the hardest part of all of this for me. And so you know, that was a great feeling. Even though we had the second COVID rush right in the middle of it, but to make people laugh at a time like this, that's a seriously good feeling, and I'm grateful to be able to do it. And that show is crazy as anything. I'll be doing it again next Christmas. But a few years ago, you know how people send out these Christmas letters, you know, 5 pages of stuff that you don't need to know. So I sent out a fake one from a redneck mother talking about a GoFundMe campaign to get mama some new teeth and all of this stuff. And I sent it out to different people I knew, but with a fake return address, and waited to hear if any of them would contact me, and only one did. Finally, I'd call people. They said, "Did you write that, Micah?" So that kind of started the show, because it's a call. It's the Christmas letter, you know, and she's just getting everything, you know, together, and it deals with every possible, you know, she talks about her husband, Carl, who was having a rough time for the last couple of years after their only son, Carl Jr., became their 5th daughter, Carlene. So just the things that drive people crazy, that's all, you know. Find out what'll make people crazy, put it on stage, you know.
Well, yeah, it seems to be kind of what you've been able to do over the years is especially, you know, what's great about your work, and especially when you go to the Tuna plays, is if you're from Texas, you can appreciate it, I think, on a different level, but anywhere you can appreciate the plays, because even if you don't have a Southern relative, you have an Aunt Pearl. You have an Aunt Bertha. You know of Vera Carp.
Oh my God. Well, in my family, you know, my mother was Vera Carp, and my older brother was Yosemite Sam. Now put them together at the breakfast table and see how that affects your peace of mind. And I'm not making that up. My brother was 5'2", little tiny cowboy, tough as a boot. He told me a story. He grew up in far West Texas in the 1950s, and he played football. And I said, "How did you play football?" And he said, "I was our secret weapon." He said they couldn't get underneath me. I was too small. And said they'd put me up against the biggest mother on the other side, and I'd come up underneath him with my helmet and catch him under the rib cage and try to knock his lungs up his gullet. And I thought about Mama the whole time. And I thought, Oh, well, yeah, that's she was a great motivator. She was a great, great motivator. So,
Yeah, I know that you first started kind of getting into acting and being in the theater program in high school, of course, where a lot of people get exposed to it. And correct me if I'm wrong, you and Joe met doing Shakespeare.
we met doing Shakespeare. Joe is a wonderful Shakespearean actor. He gets it, And he told me once. He said it's not about the language. It's about the character. He said these people were all human beings that do all the things that human beings do. But yeah, we were doing Shakespeare in San Antonio in the early 70s, Midsummer Night's Dream. And he was one of the funniest things I had ever seen in my life. And he had a big scene at the end of it where he's in drag. And I would climb up in the rafters every night and watch that scene. It was just masterful work. And then we became great friends. So all of that tuna stuff, Joe and I told those stories to each other for 10 years before we ever put it on stage. We just had such a strong friendship. And he'd tell me about Aunt Pearl and, oh God, said at Aunt Pearl's funeral, the real Aunt Pearl said her youngest son and Pearl had never gotten along, never, ever for a moment. And said he got to the coffin and he bent over and he started crying. And one of Pearl's sisters jumped up and said, "Cry, cry, you SOB, you killed her." So there you go.
There you have it. So it comes out of y'all telling these stories. Tuna comes out of telling stories about family. And then when did y'all have that idea of, hey, you know what? These characters are so dynamic. We could make something out of this.
It just came to us. We both ended up in Austin working for a theater there, and the theater didn't last. But we just said, I said, it's time to put this on stage. It's time to get this out there. And I was so naive. I thought it might keep us working for 6 weeks, and we did nearly 40 years. Yeah. Or actually we did over 40 years. Yeah. No, it was a one crazy ride. And and people just kept coming back. And we said, well, okay, do it again.
So I'm sure you've heard this time and time again, but whenever I first saw I saw Greater Tuna in Galveston, Texas, or Tuna Christmas, sorry, in Galveston, Texas, when I must have been 8 or 9 years old.
Oh, wow.
8 or 9 years old, my folks would talk about this tuna play where two guys would do the whole show, and they talked about it for years, and they finally took me with them. And I'm not sure that I understood all the humor, but I laughed when the audience laughed. I knew to laugh when they laughed, and it definitely connected to me. At a young age, I remember buying the DVD at the concession stand that day, or the merch table, and watching it as soon as I got home after I saw it. But the character that I loved, the character that everybody I talk to loves, is Dee Dee Snavely. Everybody loves Dee Dee Snavely, the proprietor of Dee Dee's Used Weapons. And tell me, Dee Dee wasn't initially a part of Greater Tuna. She came along later.
No, she showed up. She showed up in Hartford, Connecticut. Of all places, yeah. Dee Dee was just the subject of a joke that we had in the original one. And RR was her husband. We had him in, and we thought, well, we need to bring her in. So we gave her a little bit to do in Greater Tuna. And then she's tough. She wanted more, and Dee Dee got fan mail. She got extremely supportive fan mail, and then people who wanted her to clean up her language. It always struck me as so funny. And I thought, you're really chipping at the wrong boulder there. That isn't going to happen. But yeah, she wore plastic because it was easy to clean. all of these insane ideas, and the crazy sister and the husband who saw UFOs, and and too, growing up in West Texas, it's like my friend Joe Carroll Pierce says, if it's not a real big UFO, we don't even pay attention. There's so many of them out there. So, and that became subject matter for another play, and it came about during the lockdown, but I'm going to get it on stage. It's called I Saw the Lights, and it's 8 different people in Lubbock who saw the UFOs that appeared there in 1951. And I really love it.
You did that play virtually already, right? I did do it virtually, and had a real good time. It felt so good because, again, theater people weren't working. Nobody had anything or any idea when this might get better. And my friends at the State Theater in San Antonio and the Paramount helped fund it and put it together. And we hired 14 people for 3 days in the middle of the pandemic, and it felt great. We got people working, and that was that. And I'd much rather see it on stage than in that version, but we got it out. And we entertained people. Just as a performer, to do a play virtually and not, like you said, have that instant feedback, because it's one thing to write a line and say, "Oh, I think this is funny," but there's no greater barometer than that audience. And how do you even? I mean, because even in any live play, I'm sure you've never done Greater Tuna the same exact way twice, right? I mean, you hold this laugh a little bit longer, change this line, change your inflection here based on that audience feedback. Yeah. How was it doing it without the audience? It took an adjustment for me. It took a mental adjustment because we had all the people out there filming and working on it, but they couldn't laugh. They were restricted from laughing, and because it would end up on the tape. And, if you've only got 14 people, it's a laugh track isn't something you want. But I would see people shaking. I would see people bent over and shaking, and I thought, okay, trying not to laugh. And that got me through it. But it was a very different thing. It's a very, very different thing. And live performing is really what I love the most. I really do. I've seen, we had a guy come up to us one time, or he came up to me on the street in Austin and introduced himself. And he said, "My mother died at your show last Saturday night." And I said, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." He said, No, said she loved it. She loved your show. She loved going. She laughed all night. She went out in the lobby and had a heart attack and dropped dead. And said that's just the way she would have wanted to go. And I thought, well, at first I thought, was it something we did? But I was so honored by that, and that he was so kind about it. He said that's how she wanted to go. And I've seen people, it's interesting when you're doing live theater. Friday night, one would think Friday night would be the easiest night of the week, and in many ways it's the toughest because people have gotten off work. They just got the kids to the babysitter. They had a fight in the car. They had to eat in a hurry. And so the first act on Friday night is a real unusual vibe. And it would always thrill me when we came back for the second act and they were laughing out loud. They were really going crazy. And you thought, okay, we brought them out of whatever that place they were in, that Friday night funk. We brought them out of that. And so that felt really good. It is incredible what a live play can do. It's different than, every form of art can affect you in a different way, but there's something about being live and seeing the people do it. And whether it's a Broadway play or something that's playing us at the Grand, Shakespeare, or Greater Tuna, it's an incredible thing. Did you think, okay, you saw the success of Greater Tuna, Dee Dee Snavely came in Hartford, Connecticut, people wanted more. You did A Tuna Christmas, which is my favorite, and I'm sure it's a lot of people's favorite. Oh, it's yours as well. Something about that the way that play goes, every scene is, as I say, all killer, no filler. There's nothing that you could take out from that play.
That's, it is the one, and Joe and I have talked about it. I said, we didn't have a loose end in that one. There wasn't any kind of loose end or anything left up to the imagination. Every storyline tied up, and when we first did it, and we opened in San Francisco like a week after the big earthquake there in 1990. And so the audience was kind of skittish. And but we cut 45 minutes off of that show. We had written so much, I couldn't believe what we had written, and we didn't realize it until we got up there and said, well, okay. So and the great thing about writing a show like that and being the writer is, if you don't need a character, you can kill them. I mean, you can literally. And we were trying to find things for Reverend Spikes to do, and it just wasn't working in that show. And so we sent him to prison. We just had a line that he's in prison, so we got rid of him. And Hank, of course, was dead. Because that was Bertha's ex-husband, or he died at the end of it. He dropped dead in a plate of chicken wings when he saw her dance. And so, and Joe told me one time, he said, okay, Leonard's in prison and Hank is, he said, Spikes is in prison, Hank is dead. And he said, and Leonard is hanging by a thread. He said, he's down to 2 lines. So, but Tuna Christmas is my favorite. I love it. And that's one reason I did the Christmas show, Why Do Blood and Holly. I love performing for people at Christmas. It just got to be a thing that I did. And I love doing it. And I think people need it. We always talked about those Christmas audiences like Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. And that quite often you got families out there. You have no choice about family. You can pick your friends, but family, that's just who they are. And I told Joe, I said, you know what? People can come on Christmas Eve, sit there with all of their relatives that they don't really like, and not have to talk to them for 2.5 hours. I said they can laugh and carry on. And so I think we played a part there.
You definitely did. It became a tradition for all family. It's a tradition for my family now. We sit and we watch it on DVD every Christmas. We have to sit and watch A Tuna Christmas. You and Joe have performed, like you said, Tuna for 4 decades. When you're performing with somebody for that long, there's no way you can describe the chemistry. You just know they're going to be there when you need them to pick you up. They're going to be there no matter what. It's an unspoken chemistry. How was it taking the stage with him, or taking the stage for the first time without him by your side after all those years?
Well, it was, that was my first solo show, and it was exciting, and it was a little scary, and, you didn't want it. You wondered how it was going to affect our relationship, that if Joe would react well to it. And we had done other stuff with other people. We'd done different shows and ensemble casts and things like that. But it was very reassuring. It was good. It was good to have something of your own. It was just good to have something of your own, and to get to tell your own story. And another thing with my solo work, a lot of it, sometimes you create stuff, but primarily it's autobiographical, and my family's nuts. They they are the gift that keeps on giving. They really are. They really are. When my brother passed away a few years ago. He was in hospice up in Canada, and that was Yosemite Sam, and way up in Canada, like 600 miles north of the border. And we were waiting every day to hear that he was gone or going. And my niece called me, and I thought, this is it. He's gone. So I said, is he gone? She said, no, it's complicated. She said, there are forest fires coming at the town from 3 directions. So they put him in an ambulance with his hospice nurse, and they're going 300 miles north to Prince Rupert, where he'll be safe. And I said, why should it surprise us that on his last day of life, Corky Williams is heading toward the North Pole with a fire licking at his butt? And she said, I've already thought it. She said, I already thought it. So, yeah.
Yeah, they're definitely, families can be the gift that keeps on giving. And I know what you're saying by having something that's your own, that you've created, and you're able to completely manipulate it in your vision, as opposed to a shared vision, which can come with its own challenges. I do remember seeing a play that you all did. There was an ensemble cast. It was called I Heard That. Yeah, I believe, yes. And I wanted to ask you, because the opening scene of I Heard That is so brilliant. I mean, it is incredible. For people who've never seen the play, it's a married couple, and I believe it was at night, or y'all are getting ready to go to bed, or just waking up.
Yeah, getting ready to go to bed. Yeah.
And there's not a word of dialogue.
Not a word of dialogue. It's all stuff that they hear, and they are not a happy couple. They are not a happy couple by any stretch of the imagination. She's real big, he's real small, and you discover everything about them and their relationship without them saying a word. By what they listen to on television, by there's this beautiful little bluebird outside singing and all, and she screams at it.
How many times, though, did y'all have to, fine-tune that scene? Because to get the laughs, because I remember being there, I think it was opening night in Galveston, and I remember the laughs were roarous at that scene. Yep. How many times did you have to say, okay, what if we add this in? We should take that out,
We had done a version of that before. And so part of that had been set earlier. And the sad thing about that period was that Joe was getting very sick, and we were all in denial about it, and he was getting very, very ill. And so he was getting more and more limited in what he could do, and he was under doctor's care, and we couldn't, and the show was very controversial. Some people loved it, some people hated it. There are some people that only want us to do tuna. That's all, and they don't want you to, to grow. I always think of the actress Mary Pickford back in the 1920s, silent film actress. She couldn't cut her braids until she was 30 years old. The public wouldn't let her cut those braids. So, but we got through that, and it was a long, slow process for Joe to get better, but he did.
Yeah,
I talked to Joe. He's up in Oklahoma, and just living the life. And we talk several times a week and just laugh so hard. And that's how that whole relationship started, was with 2 people laughing. And that's where it is now. Joe doesn't perform anymore, but there's a lot of occasion where we got 2 people laughing and just entertaining each other to the nth degree, And he told me he was doing this, directing this thing in Bartlesville, Oklahoma, and they were using locals, and it was kind of a hillbilly heaven thing, and all of these people impersonating this one and that one. And he said, we had this kid came up and he did an Elvis impersonation, and he was good. He said he was real good. And he was so happy with his performance that he took off. He took off in the costume to go get drunk. And he said, the next day I pulled up, Joe is a docent at a museum there. He said, I pulled up into the parking lot at the museum and Elvis's wig was in the parking lot. So you can't make that up. You can't make it up, but we had the most wonderful time. And we're working on a show together. We're writing one. That we are having a ball. It's a musical for children and very childish adults. And I think, to me, the finest comedy that I know, and I love comedy, are the old Looney Tunes, Warner Brothers cartoons.
Yeah.
Got those animals with human characteristics. You know, you got a rabbit from Brooklyn, you know, and a rooster from the deep South. And Sylvester, you know, and little Sylvester Jr. going, oh, Father, I'm so ashamed. And the thing about those Looney Tune cartoons was they were funny for children, but they were also funny for adults. And there was stuff thrown in for the adults that you'd kind of, okay, what are they talking about there? Who was Richard? You know, and I talked to a friend of mine very much into comedy in LA, and he told me that group that wrote that stuff, they were so crazy and so wild and out of control that Jack Warner put them on the very back of the lot where no one would, the tour buses, no one would see them. And they were in this big, tall building, just ramshackle building. And it was like 35 steps in an interior stairway to get up to where they were. And that Jack Warner thought they were doing stuff they shouldn't do, which they were. And so he would send this gopher, this idiot, up to check on them and make sure that they were working. So they removed one step about halfway up and screwed the light bulb, and he would trip every time. And they would hear him fall, and they'd get to work.
Rearrange all the furniture and unscrew all the light bulbs.
That's exactly what I actually did that in my past. Ow! Oh,
somebody's home. Oh. So you and Joe. So let me ask you about the writing process, because it's one thing to be a performer; it's another one to write. You said a lot of the Tuna plays came out of conversations and things of that nature. Did you find it hard to write the dialogue and set up the scenes?
Sometimes, one thing we learned over time was that, good writing involves throwing a lot of stuff away. Where have you made your point? Are you doing that joke the third time? Do we really? Yeah, it's a good joke, but, one thing I think we learned in writing is it's better to be 10 minutes, 15 minutes short than 20 seconds long. You do not want to keep an audience there beyond a certain point. No matter what they've done, they're full. They've had enough. And Joe is exceptional as a writer at creating situational stuff. My favorite scene in Tuna Christmas was Dee Dee's gun shop. I never had so much fun in my life, but that was Joe's idea. Let's do a scene with people shopping for guns at Christmas. I said, you got it. That was it. That was it. And I did actually most of the writing in that scene, not all of it, but most of it. But it was Joe's idea. It was Joe's idea. And I tell you, Joe has an ability with certain characters that I don't think there's anybody in the world that can do them better. I haven't seen it. And I've seen some people do some very good work with those roles. But Joe, Bertha and Pearl, he just inhabited them. He had it down, and you couldn't not love them.
Oh, yeah.
And it was fun to write for them. It was fun for me, the more you got to know Pearl, it was fun for me, to say, why don't we try this with her? What about this line? What about, all of that. And Pearl, gosh, we had some of the craziest times and the most fun were when we were doing PR. And it got to be a thing for us to do PR in character. So we were in Washington, D.C., and opening at Christmas. I think it was Thanksgiving week. And there was a local celebrity there, newscaster, that wanted to do a series with us with Bertha and Vera shopping for Thanksgiving turkeys. And we said, okay. And so they got us in a limo. We're all, in Vera and Pearl drag. And they found this Safeway that was closest to us because we were rehearsing downtown that was in a really rough neighborhood. I mean, a really rough neighborhood. And we pull up, and Arch Campbell is there with the cameras. We pull up and the cops are there, and they got 3 guys in handcuffs. And we pull right into the picture, jump out of the car, and Aunt Pearl said, "That's the one who stole my Harley." And then Vera said, "Rough them up. It's the only thing they understand." And totally politically incorrect stuff.
Right.
What they would have said. And then we went into the grocery store, and we got in the meat department, and we were testing the turkeys for freshness, where you just slap the hell out of a raw turkey. And we're going through the store slapping all the turkeys, and women are crying. They got tears going down their face. So you just, you see an opportunity, you have to take it.
Yeah, and once you understand the character on that level, you can write as much as you want to, you can improv as much as you want to, and it just comes naturally.
Yes.
One of the things that I realized, going back to the Tuna plays for just a second, why they had such an impact on me is I found myself quoting them just in everyday life. Like someone would say something odd, and I'd say, "Well, some people are just funny that way," and or things like that. I know a thing or two. I've been to Waco. Like, I say these things on a daily basis, and you forget where they come from sometimes. Have you heard that from people, or are there any things that people come up and say, "Hey, I say this all the time to my kids or my aunt"?
When we did the HBO version, and we had the waitresses in that one and all, and it had just come out, and I was sitting at the bar in a diner in Atlanta having breakfast, and this waiter came over and he said, "If you move one over, you'll be under the blower." And I said, okay. So yeah, it would show up in the most amazing places, in the most, glass houses, it would just show up in the most amazing places. Yeah.
How was that HBO version to do? Because you take something from the stage to the screen, it's different. Did you enjoy that process?
I loved it. We had a ball. We were on a very tight schedule. Norman Lear produced it. And it was tricky because they were doing camera stuff. You had to do half a scene with one character and then have to go back and do the other and the reactions. And I really loved it. I had a great time. And Hollywood was always after us, but they never quite knew what they wanted to do with us. They every time we would play LA, they would all show up, and we want you, we've got to do something. And then, and then when you go off to Cincinnati the next week, they forget you, but our real joy was live performing. Mm-hmm. It's just, it really was what it was. I look back recently, several years ago, I was in Hollywood with some friends of mine, and a friend of mine was a producer of several well-known sitcoms. And we came in and sat in on a session with a sitcom that should have lasted and didn't. And I watched these people working with it, and I thought, I could have done this. I could have written this. I could have done this. I could have been part of this whole thing. And, it was interesting to think about. No, I don't have any regrets. I really don't. I don't have any regrets. It was, we did what we did, and we made a lot of people happy.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what we need more than anything in this country, is for people to start laughing again, to calm down and find things that are funny, and not funny mean or funny aggressive or funny putting someone down, but just funny. I mean, funny is funny. It can break through anywhere. Mm-hmm. And it's healing. And we need a lot of healing in every corner of the country. We need a whole lot of healing right now. And if I can make some people laugh, there you go.
There you have it. Well, one more thing on Tuna, then I want to ask you about your novels. The quick change has always just fascinated me. I know you've probably been asked by that like a million times, but the quick change, how did y'all pull that off so effortlessly? And was it a difficult thing to figure out how to do?
It was as difficult as it was just a serious part of your rehearsal process. Mm-hmm. And how you created the show. We rehearsed that absolutely as much as we rehearsed on stage, sometimes more. There was, I know it's hard for people to believe this, but there was a very kind of Zen approach to it. Of slow is fast. If you get in a hurry, it slows you down. Mm-hmm. If you're pushing that arm, you're trying to get your arm through that sleeve and you're pushing it real hard to get it through fast, it'll catch, and you'll have to go back and do it again. And so you had to get in a mindset. And then we had great dressers. The dressers were so much, and they all had character names. We had Lupe and Julio and Verbena and Maxie Bovine and Shelley Jean Palvador. They were all back there. And but it was something at first. When we first rehearsed it, we had a great deal of help from the director, Mark Lamos, and we would rehearse it in front of him and finally get that costume change. And he'd say, now knock 2 seconds off that. Do it again. And the more you did it, the quicker you could do it. And the other thing in regard to the costume changes was that you could not telegraph to the audience that you were in any kind of a hurry. You had to walk off in character. I've seen Tuna plays where people are in character until they got to get off stage and then they just run. And it kind of gives things away. And so that's something that you really had to get used to with that. You really had to get used to. Don't run, don't hurry, stay in character. We'll get you on. And occasionally, Bertha one night had a cockroach in her hair. I've never seen anything like it. This cockroach is bigger than Hitler. And it was on. I'm not kidding. And I thought, you want to see Shout and Shimmy? If that goes down the back of that pantsuit, we're gonna have a whole new show.
Oh, good Lord.
It off her head. I did. And she's like, what are you doing? Oh, the joys of playing South Carolina. There you go.
I want to talk about your novels. I hear that you're writing novels now. I think you just finished writing one of them, right?
I finished one, and I'm talking to some publishers next week, and I hope it will. I think we're going to get it published here in Texas. There's a lot in the business of publishing. There are phases and changes and all of that. And being a 70-year-old white man from Texas does not necessarily get you listened to right at the moment. We're paying for the sins of our past. And but I love the novel, and it's a coming of age story for an entire community. It's a small town in Texas, but there's nothing satiric in it, and it's all the passion for football, the local intrigue, all of it. And people growing up and discovering who they are. It's set in 1968, which was such a transformative year for the country. It was a year of war, of assassinations, there was so much change that went on. And I was a junior in high school when that was all going on, so it was very, very vivid to me. And but it's a book about daring to love people. Every time I start to write, I go back out to West Texas, or I go out to Lubbock, and just get kind of charged up, by the personalities out there. And, a part of the play too is about the book is about a boy who gets injured playing football, and he can't ever play again because it could kill him, if he takes a bad hit. And what you find out is that he never wanted to play, and he wasn't playing for himself. He was playing for his dad. He was playing because he was big and he had to, which if you lived out there, I never had that problem. I wasn't big enough. But if you were a big guy, you had to play football. And a lot of them did not like it, but they did it. And I thought, I'm going to deal with that and the kind of friendships that come about. And the other thing that was such a part of my life out there, that I got trained as an actor because of UIL. Right. Because of one-act play contest with kids. And, there were some little towns out there that won state every year in UIL. They couldn't punt, but they'd kick your butt on stage. And it was like, and it showed me a way out. It gave me I think that's important when young people see, well, maybe this is where I'm going to be forever, and maybe not. You can read history or you can make history, but I really love it. There's one of my favorite sections was there was the World's Fair in San Antonio in 1968, and I bring a bunch of West Texas high school kids to the World's Fair, and the place is never the same. I love the book. It's kind of hard to describe, but like I said, it's a coming of age story for an entire community. Yeah. How people are affected by the events of the year, and how you see their goodness or whatever else.
Yeah, it's an interesting story, and also to write a novel. I mean, I just finished, sent it off to the publisher, I don't know, a month ago, my second book, but they're nonfiction books, so it's a lot of research driven. But still, I find writing process to be arduous at times, right? Sitting there in front of a laptop or whatever method you're writing with and staring at that page can be intimidating. Did you find any of that?
Yeah. I'm lucky in that I can kind of write anywhere I want to.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I did a lot of great writing in the old days in airports, in airport lounges. And I can kind of do it anywhere. I can block stuff out and I don't have to be in my favorite chair and the light doesn't have to be right. And I don't have to have the scented candle, and Joni Mitchell in the background, God bless her. And, one thing I do know is that I write better when I write by hand and I write in cursive. And and generally only I can read it if I'm in a hurry. But I do my best writing that way. And then I take it to the computer and transcribe it. And also I've got these journals, hundreds of them here in the house that are full of writing. But that's the way that's the way I do it. That's the way I find to do it. And I admire those who have to do the research, who are not creating fiction, but really have to research a subject. It's fascinating, and there's an art form to it and a selectivity process. It's again the thing we were saying before: what do you keep? What do you throw away? Mm-hmm. Do they need to know this? And I assume you're writing about sports. Is that right?
Actually, these were writing about films. I just finished writing about films on this one. Yeah, about the James Bond series and the evolution of. I did another book about the Back to the Future series, so more of a film writing. But nevertheless, you're right, and it's hard not to sometimes fall in love with your own words.
Oh, it is. It is. It's interesting you talking about writing for films. 1968 was a year when the film industry totally changed. And I was a junior in high school, and there were 4 films that came out within a couple of months of each other. There was Bonnie and Clyde.
Right.
There was Graduate. There was Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. And there was In the Heat of the Night. And it changed it all. And all 4 of those films are subjects in my novel.
Oh,
how
wow.
people reacted to them, what they got from them, who got them and who didn't, that sort of thing, the kind of changes and racial changes that were coming in the country, who related to it and who didn't. It's just there's a scene of a boy and girl breaking up after The Graduate. He got it and she didn't.
You're right. When you look,
no way to resolve it. Yeah.
When you think back about the 1960s, I mean, we're post, 1963 is Kennedy, the assassinations, and you have Bobby and Martin Luther King, and those films that you just mentioned, Sidney Poitier, and the impact that he had. We just lost him, of course, but Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, and In the Heat of the Night. You could play the scene where he says, "They call me Mr. Tibbs," for any theater class, any acting class, and learn.
Absolutely. Yeah. In the Heat of the Night is one magnificent film, and it's magnificent all the way down. There's not a character in it that isn't perfect. And, down to the minor characters, Warren Oates, who's such a wonderful, great actor, and he's never better than he was, in that film. And Lee Grant, who had been blacklisted and hadn't been able to work for 15 years in Austin, she got a role, and she was marvelous. And again, and Bonnie and Clyde was screaming brilliant. It really was screaming brilliant. It was all, up until that point, somebody got shot. The only way you'd know it, they might put a little ketchup on their shirt, which was still ironed. And, and Bonnie and Clyde showed violence for what it was. They showed it for what it was, and then showed the humanity behind people who could end up doing things like that.
Yeah.
I know for me that film watching it, you realize that these are supposed to be the villains, and yet you're rooting for them. And that the cops that are after them and the rangers and all of that look like your relatives, but you're not on their side. Mm-hmm. It made you look at certain types in a different way. And it was just screaming brilliant. Just, and that wonderful scene in Bonnie and Clyde where they pick up Gene Fowler, Gene Wilder, the mortician,
yes,
where they steal his car. And then he and the girlfriend chase him down and they kidnap them. And then they all go out for hamburgers. And then they find out he's a mortician and they throw them out. It was so wonderful.
Incredible. I'm looking forward to reading the novels. Looking forward to seeing I Saw the Lights, because we could talk about UFOs for another hour, but I won't go down that rabbit hole with you. But you have to have a deep appreciation for everything that happened there to write that play, right? I mean, have you ever seen a UFO? I mean, have you? Yeah.
You do out there. Mm-hmm. They're out there.
I believe it. They have to be.
I don't know what that was that I saw, but it was not explainable, and but they got pictures of those in 1951. Mm-hmm. They ended up in Life magazine in the New York Times, and and at one point, and the government said it was birds, and they go, no, it wasn't birds.
It wasn't a weather balloon.
It wasn't a weather balloon. It wasn't birds. And but having different people who saw the lights. The final character is my favorite character in that book, or in that play, and she's a beautician in Lubbock who saw the lights. She saw them up close, and she said, I don't know whether it was God or something or from another world or what, but I know that I felt like as insignificant as a single grain of sand, and I love that feeling. And she said, and the other thing was, after I saw the lights, I couldn't be mean anymore. And that really upset everybody at the beauty shop. And but yeah, it's I love that one, and I'm dying to get it back up. And maybe by summer, I don't know, maybe by summer that'll be up.
Well, I can't wait to see it. I can't wait to see what you and Joe write up, the musical and the novels. And just congratulations on your lifelong success, and just thank you. From a fan to the performer, you've lit up my life for years with entertainment, and it's just an honor to speak with you.
Well, thank you. This has been a great interview, and I've done a million of them. This has been a great interview. It's memorable, and it feels like friendship. So we'll have to talk again.
We will have to talk again. Jaston Williams, everybody, thank you so much for joining us. We'll talk soon.
What have you done now?